Thanks for staying with us. We just heard a clear division on Medicaid expansion during our debate, and now our roundtable of political journalists weighs in. Emily Ramshaw is with the Texas Tribune, and Ryan Poppe is with Texas Public Radio. Thank you guys for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
So let's start back on Monday. We had the whole Perry event and the Democrat response. I have never really heard that much protest outside the governor's press conference before. I mean, it was a little difficult to actually hear what he and the other people were saying.
I know. I think the only one of them you could actually hear well was Ted Cruz, who was trying to speak up over them. But you had a really rowdy crowd outside of the governor's office, protesting Perry, Cruz, and Cornyn's decision not to expand Medicaid in Texas. And then, down the hall a couple hours later, you had several Democrats gathering to, make the reverse pitch. So it was a really interesting start to the week, and there was drama throughout the rest of the week on this too.
When you talk about those leaders, they have that firm stance, but then you hear so many other Republicans that are trying to come up with ideas about how some kind of system might work. What are you seeing?
Well, it seems with the Colcourse video that was released earlier in the week, she's definitely making an attempt to sort of make some kind of make something of this, as far as putting a push for maybe health exchange or spelling it out for the public, because I think that with Medicaid expansion, it is one of those topics that is just, it's so huge, a lot of people don't understand it, and you need somebody to sort of come in there and break it down. So I think what I've been seeing is there's two camps in the Republican Party that they're ready to begin those talks, and then there's another part of that that just still is saying no, to both Medicaid expansion and the idea of health exchange or state where we would be able to set up a health exchange, is what I mean.
But when the budget bill hit the House floor, there was the initial vote, and then, like Peggy Venable just told us in our debate, she was getting calls from a lot of the Republican lawmakers say, I didn't mean to vote for that, we're going to go back and change that, and that's exactly what they did. It's like 2 steps forward and 1 step back as far as getting closer to Medicaid expansion. What do you think?
It looked sort of like they made a mistake last night. You had an amendment that was filed by one of the House's more liberal members saying, look, this is sort of laying the foundation. He didn't say it this way, but what the amendment would have done is laid the foundation for the state to negotiate with the Obama administration about expanding Medicaid and lay out some terms for how to do it. What ended up happening is that amendment did pass with a bunch of Republican support. And then all of a sudden, the wheels of the email chain started turning, and suddenly you had Republicans looking at each other and saying, okay, wait, what exactly did I just vote for? And, oh, by the way, is this going to be used against me in a primary? And then all of a sudden they voted to reconsider.
But it's not over yet. I mean, we've even heard about Dr. Zerwas over in the House talking about bringing something up before the Appropriations Committee this coming week. I know that you guys have both written about that. What are we going to expect?
Well, what I've talked with Zerwas is he is still pushing for something that's a Texas unique plan. That's been the big hot topic, is a Texas-centric plan, one that sort of satisfies all our needs. Now, with that plan, there seems to be still a section of Texans that aren't insured. So I think his plan, it covers 1.5 million Texans of that 100 to 130% poverty rate that we're looking at. So that, at least the last conversations that I had with him, he was still pushing for something that would be more in line with something that Texas could design themselves, rather than something that we just adopted from a federal government.
And he's a doctor. You've got a doctor proposing this. Does that give any more clout to it?
I don't think so. I mean, I think this is going to end up being pretty dead in the water. What we saw last night was an overarching sentiment in the House that they did not want to pass anything that might even resemble at some point a Medicaid expansion. So I think the only chance for this passing, I think that Zerwas bill in particular is going to be dead on arrival. I think the only options that are going to remain are maybe some negotiations in conference committee on the budget that might, sneak in some language at the last minute.
Is there any indication that there will be or, have anything set up for negotiations with the federal government yet?
It seems that some of that's already been going on, as you heard, between Representative Lois Colcourse and Representative Trey Martinez Fisher of San Antonio, is that there has been some of that under the table, I would say, negotiations going on with the CMA to sort of, I don't know, kick things off, maybe kind of test the waters, see where we are. But it's all unofficial at this time. So it's hard to really get a grasp on if any of that has any teeth to it.
And this is an issue that obviously has a lot of outside groups that, like you said, are probably you know, talking to members, you know, maybe after that vote or any other time. I mean, is it something we're actually going to be able to figure out this session, or are we going to be coming back to it later on?
I will be shocked if we figure this out by the end of the session. Again, you know, I think there's some interest from Republican members of the legislature to try to find some way to draw down some of this federal funding. But the reality is there's a very strong drumbeat against this from the more conservative wing of the party. And at the end of the day, you know, they're watching, and I think that the threat of a primary and Perry very strongly saying, you know, we are not going to do this, I think it's going to be a major deterrent.
People said that this was going to be maybe the big point of contention during the whole budget, but we didn't really see too much of that. And it seems like this budget bill has really been a lot smoother process than what we've seen in past sessions.
No, definitely so. It seems that you have a lot of partisan agreement this session. You know, there is a little bit of things I think that Democrats would like to have ironed out, like a return of or complete restoration of our education funding. That seemed to be one that really touched off a hotly contested topic. Especially with what we saw during the Abel Herrera amendment that would basically do away with the idea of school vouchers and open enrolled charter schools. So there are some things that I think there's a lot of partisanship going on. There's other things that clearly both sides are divided on.
And someone's going to end up mad either way.
Yeah. Isn't that always the case?
Yes. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. And we continue our conversation online. Be sure to visit the legislative section of KXAN.com. There you'll find our guide to the legislative process in Texas, our list of the major players, and my blog from the Capitol. It's all in our legislative section of KXAN.com. And you can email me your thoughts and questions at josh.hinkle@KXAN.com. You can also find me on Twitter at HinkleJ. Thanks for joining us for In Session In Depth. Have a great morning.